Hey everybody, so I'm working on this basket design, which will be a video in itself later on with a pattern, but I wanted to focus on a new kind of handle today. This is a rolled handle. We've done videos on those before, but the attachment style and the orientation is a lot different. And I think it's a really cool and easy way to do, it's like a diet rolled handle. You get like all of the cool looks and practicality and function, but it's a little bit easier. You don't have to line it. Now, keep in mind, this is also kind of a Moroccan style basket with a ton of rivets. So not necessarily everyone's style, and I fully understand that. This is kind of a one-off. But the handle itself is really interesting. So I figure let's do a tutorial on that today so that you can start using it on bags and whatever else you'd like, because it's pretty fun. Okay, so this is my personal bag. I've been using it for like 4 or 5 years. And you can see this is more of a traditional rolled handle. So basically, you have some lining in here, and you put it on kind of the flat face here, and it's lovely. I mean, it's traditional. It's how it's been done forever. But this style, we're going to do it almost sideways, and you don't have to use a ton of rivets, obviously, but you can also stitch it on and stuff, and it's a little bit different because you don't have to line it at all, but we are going to use a core and we're going to lock it in. So now that we know the difference between the two, let's get started making the second one to go on that side of the basket. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out how much of a handle, how long we want this part of our handle, because we're going to use a core inside of this leather to make it tubular. Now, what I've done is I have a dip in this design, so it's going to be different if this is flat across, but I'm going to go with 8 inches, and then I'm going to add 2 inches on either side for where it's going to attach to the bag. And here we go. So I have my strip that's going to eventually become a handle. This is 1 foot long by 2 1/4 inches wide. Yours may vary depending on what you're using for a core. My core, I'm using thick round leather lace. I like this because it molds over time. So what I'm going to do is, first I'm going to cut my core. I'm going to cut it 8 inches long. And be careful when you cut this because it does roll around. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to skive this down, but you can just use a blade because I'm using, I think this is 1/4 inch thick, might be 3/8 of an inch thick. So what we'll do is just take our blade and make a nice beveled cut. And that'll just make sure that this cord will meld nicely into the ends of the handle. Now the next thing we want to do is bust out our ruler here. Now that we have our core cut, we're going to take our strip and we're going to make some marks on it so we know where to glue and where to place that cord. So the first thing I'm going to do actually is I'm going to take my cord itself and I'm going to mark the center of it. Just with a little pencil mark. Then I'm going to take my strip, this is the front side of my leather, this is the back side, and I'm going to, in the center, mark 6 inches, remember 12, so I'm marking the center and then I'm marking 4 inches off on either side. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is going to tell me where exactly my core is going to go. And then if you want, you can draw a little center line here, although that's not super important. Believe it or not, now we're ready to glue. Gluing this part is easy. I'm going to use some barge cement. I'm just going to do a strip right down the middle. Now you don't want to go over your line at this point because some of this might show, anything past this might show in the end. So I'm just going to do a little line of glue down the middle for now. Then I personally like when my bevels are face up, so I'm going to flip it over and I'm just going to do little dabs of glue. You don't really even need to glue this core in, but I like to just put a little bit in there because we're going to go over and glue everything afterwards once it's stuck in. While we wait for glue to dry, look at the snow we got. And my big man is loving life right now. So once this glue's tacked up, I'm just going to go through and stick this in here, just like that. And that's just going to hold it there temporarily. Now the next thing we have to do is we need to punch a couple of holes. So we need to find the center of our strip here, which is going to be different for everyone depending on the thickness of your core. For me, I have 2 1/4, so I'm going to go 1 1/8 That's my center there. And this is kind of where the difference starts. Now, if your core is not directly in the center, that's fine, because once we roll everything up and fold it in half like this, it'll center it. That's no issue. So I'm just going to punch a hole right at that intersection there that I drew. And now we're ready to glue the rest of this up. Okay, now here's the important thing. We don't want to glue past where this hole is, right? So a 1/2 inch past your core on either side. And now our next step is to seal this up. So my center mark is right there. I like to pinch right in the center to make sure that everything's going to be even. There we go. And I'm going to work my way out on one side. And then I'm going to work my way out on the other. And you'll see that because I'm using really thick leather, it's not going to want to stick right away. That's okay. We'll just go in with a bone folder and make our nice crisp line that'll eventually also become our stitch line. I guess eventually is like the next step. So the next step is going to be sewing this up. Now we're going to just make our stitch line. I have my center mark here. I know that a 1/2 inch from there is where my cord ends, but remember, my core is tapered. I'm going to want to put a couple of rivets in here. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to put my rivets down here because we have this taper here, and that reason for that taper is so that I can put a rivet right there that it will literally never happen, but let's say just in case, the core, all the glue fails, it can't slide out because it's riveted in. We're going to do that before we stitch so that we can incorporate this hole into our stitch line. So when we set our rivet, it is going to flatten everything so that we're going from tubular to flat, because in this design, we want this piece on each end to be flat. But you'll notice that's also why we didn't glue it, because we're going to be wrapping it around the basket that we're making. So to punch our stitching holes, super easy. We're going to punch from one hole to the other. You don't have to put your tine in the hole punch. You can go a little bit out. And we're going to just use the line that our bone folder naturally made for us as kind of a little groove to put our stitch holes in. And the nice thing about this is at the other end, you just kind of got to get close. Doesn't have to be perfect because you're just going to be putting a rivet there anyway. And that rivet will hide how this stitch ends, so it's very mellow to do. Make sure we got through on our stitch line on the other side. It's looking good. So I'm going to get this stitched up and I'll show you how to use the rivet holes at the end. As you sew this, you come across the rivet hole that we punched, either at the start or the back. All I'm going to do is just go through it like another hole and then wrap around. So if this were the beginning, you would just start here and sew this way. Because this is the end, I'm just going to pass these through. Then I'm going to do my back stitch. And just end the stitch as normal, and you're good to go. So now we're going to just pop our rivets in here. I'm using the 9.2 millimeter cap size. And these are great because they're gonna match our bag, which has a ton of rivets in it, but they're also great for this application because it's just going to be a nice little detail. Now, if you're doing a bag that these were sewn in and you didn't have a lot of rivets, you see this on the ends and it just looks a little fancier. So for our next step, you see we have a natural crease right here from the hole that we punched. What I'm going to do is I'm very carefully going to cut down that crease. Like that. And then it'll pop apart and you'll be able to lay this totally flat. We're going to do that on both sides before we trim down the center part of our handle so that we get a nice tension-free layout of our handle to the distance that I want from the stitch line. And it's not going to be perfect, so I don't do this all the time. But for this one, it'll work okay. You can also just freehand it and then sand it down. Then I'm just going to kind of trace in a little curve to go around our rivets here. Give it a little extra space. You can always sand more down later. And then I'm just going to freehand the cut. Make sure you have a nice sharp blade. Now finish this as you want. I'm going to go give it a little sanding and a bevel, and then we'll finish up both ends and get this installed. And once we're burnished here, you can see I sculpted the ends to how I want it. Now here's the important thing, right? If this is a bag, let's say you're making a bag, and this is the top of your bag. The cool thing about this design is, instead of having to flay this part out, which this is cut, but it's not usually cut like this, right? Instead of having to do this, all you can do is cut this little relief, glue this together, and you have a very simple way to make a nice bag handle. Really simple. You can stitch it, you can glue it, whatever. You can also put one half inside and one half outside of the bag, which is a really unique look that you don't see very often, which I'm actually going to probably start using a lot more because this is pretty cool. For me, I'm making this ridiculous over-riveted towel basket thing. So I'm going to punch my 4 holes and get it installed this way. And here we go. Nice little basket for towels in the bathroom and a ton of rivets. But I mean, it's got that sort of Moroccan leatherwork vibe, which that's what I was going for. And to conclude the handle project, this is a very simple way of attaching rolled handles. So if you want to kind of step your way up to our fancier rolled handle designs, which there are 2 or 3 videos if you want to look back in our catalog there, this is the easiest way to attach them that I've found by far. And they look really nice. They sit super straight, and they also add, when you do a couple rivets or you sew this whole thing in, they add a lot of nice structure to the bag. So that's going to be it for this one. What do you guys think? Are you going to try this one out? Let me know in the comments what your favorite handle type is. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.